One mysterious day inside Shah Jahan's palace changed the future of the Mughal Empire forever. Aurangzeb believed someone wanted to kill him. Shah Jahan stripped his own son of power. Dara Shukoh stood at the center of suspicion, and only Princess Jahanara knew how to stop the royal family from collapsing. But what really happened behind the palace walls? The answer is far more shocking than most history books reveal. Night descended over Agra on February 6, 1643. Along the banks of the Yamuna River, the Mughal Empire gathered for a moment unlike any that had come before. Emperor Shah Jahan entered the mausoleum he had raised in memory of his beloved wife, Aurangzeb Banu Begum, known throughout history as Mumtaz Mahal. The occasion marked the 12th annual Urs, the Islamic commemoration of her passing, and for the first time, the ceremony took place inside the Taj Mahal itself. Although craftsmen were still refining many of its decorative details and work across the surrounding complex would continue for years, the great mausoleum had already become the spiritual heart of the monument. It was no longer simply an imperial construction project. It had become a sacred place of remembrance. As evening settled across the gardens, invited guests made their way through pathways lined with fragrant flowers. Ahead of them, the white marble mausoleum dominated the horizon. Its massive dome towered above the landscape, yet its gleaming surface reflected the fading light so gently that it seemed almost detached from the earth below. One contemporary poet searched for words worthy of describing the sight. The back of the earth-supporting bull sways to its belly, reduced to a footprint from carrying such a burden. Yet the same poet believed the monument possessed an almost supernatural lightness, writing, "The eye can mistake it for a cloud." And when sunlight faded into evening, he captured its brilliance with another observation. Light sparkles from within its pure stones, like wine within a crystal goblet. The mourners crossed the monumental southern gateway, where elegant Quranic inscriptions created by the celebrated calligrapher Amanat Khan welcomed those entering the sacred space. Beyond the entrance lay the central octagonal chamber, the architectural and spiritual center of the mausoleum. Every detail inside reflected imperial magnificence. Rich carpets softened the marble floor beneath each step. Fine velvet and silk textiles covered the walls, while ornate golden chandeliers cast a warm glow throughout the chamber. During Urs ceremonies, illumination held deep symbolic meaning, representing the enduring virtues and spiritual light of the departed. As the gathering fell silent, mullahs began reciting prayers for Mumtaz Mahal. Their voices rose toward the immense dome overhead before echoing back through the chamber, filling the marble interior with solemn devotion. At the very center stood an extraordinary marble enclosure unlike anything seen elsewhere in the empire. More than 6 feet high, the octagonal screen surrounded the cenotaph with remarkable elegance. The Mughal court historian Abdul Hamid Lahori described it as being highly polished and pure, with an entrance fashioned of jasper after the Turkish fashion, joined with gilded fasteners. Historical records indicate that this delicate marble screen replaced an earlier barrier commissioned by Shah Jahan. According to those accounts, the emperor had first ordered a magnificent railing crafted from solid gold and adorned with precious jewels. Concerned that such priceless wealth might attract thieves or vandals, he later ordered it removed and replaced with the marble lattice that survives today. Master craftsmen carved the screen from a single block of white marble, transforming solid stone into patterns so delicate they resembled woven lace. Through its intricate openings, visitors could see the ceremonial cenotaph of Mumtaz Mahal resting beneath the great dome. Its surface bloomed with flowers fashioned from precious stones. Their graceful stems and blossoms appeared almost alive, creating the impression that beauty continued to flourish even in death. Flowing Quranic inscriptions surrounded the monument, while a black marble epitaph identified the woman whose memory inspired the creation of this extraordinary sanctuary. The illumined grave of Arjumand Banu Begum, entitled Mumtaz Mahal, who died in the year 1040. Some historical accounts also describe another remarkable feature displayed during these annual commemorations. One chronicler reported that Shah Jahan commissioned an elaborate covering woven from countless pearls. According to that account, this magnificent sheet of pearls was carefully placed over Mumtaz Mahal's cenotaph during Friday evenings and on the anniversary of her death, adding another layer of splendor to the ceremony. While the object itself has not survived, its description remains preserved in historical writings. Hidden beneath the ceremonial chamber, away from the eyes of visitors, rested the true burial chamber. There, upon a marble platform, lay Mumtaz Mahal's actual grave, marked by another white marble cenotaph crafted with the same remarkable artistry and bearing the same commemorative inscription as the monument above. For Shah Jahan, this gathering was not merely an imperial tradition. Within walls of luminous marble, surrounded by prayer, light, and silence, he honored the woman whose memory had shaped the greatest architectural achievement of his reign. On that February night in 1643, the Taj Mahal stood not simply as a monument beneath the great marble dome, but as a timeless expression of remembrance, faith, and enduring love. Before the cenotaph of Mumtaz Mahal stood Emperor Shah Jahan, the chief mourner. For 12 years he had lived with the loss of the woman who had shared his throne, his ambitions, and his private world. Now, for the first time, her annual memorial was being observed inside the completed mausoleum itself. Some historians believe the emperor arrived at the Taj Mahal by royal barge, crossing the Yamuna River from Agra Fort, as members of the Mughal court often did. No surviving contemporary account confirms the journey with certainty, but the image has endured because of its symbolism. On one bank stood the fortress from which Shah Jahan ruled one of the wealthiest empires on earth. On the opposite bank rose the monument that embodied his deepest personal sorrow. Whether he came by river or by road, the destination carried the same meaning. This was more than another anniversary of mourning. It represented the completion of a vision that had dominated more than a decade of Shah Jahan's reign. The emperor had not set out merely to build another royal tomb. His ambition was far greater. He intended to create a resting place that reflected the Islamic image of paradise itself, a monument where earthly beauty would point toward eternal life. Every architectural detail served that purpose. The inscriptions surrounding Mumtaz Mahal's cenotaph did more than identify her as Arjumand Banu Begum, honored with the title Mumtaz Mahal. They also included the 99 beautiful names of Allah, the sacred attributes through which Muslims recognize the mercy, majesty, wisdom, justice, and perfection of God. Visitors entering the chamber were therefore surrounded not only by memorial inscriptions, but by a continuous reminder that the monument's deepest meaning was spiritual rather than political. To Shah Jahan, the Taj Mahal was never intended as a celebration of imperial power alone. It was designed to express faith, remembrance, and the promise of divine mercy beyond death. Every polished surface, every carved verse, and every carefully balanced proportion contributed to the vision of a heavenly garden prepared for eternal rest. Such an extraordinary ambition demanded extraordinary resources. Yet even today, historians cannot state with certainty how much the Taj Mahal actually cost. No complete financial accounts whose authenticity is beyond dispute have survived from Shah Jahan's reign. Much of the surviving evidence comes from court chronicles and later manuscripts whose figures do not always agree with one another. According to the emperor's official historian, Abdul Hamid Lahori, the construction required 50 lakhs of rupees, approximately 5 million rupees. Many historians, however, believe this figure probably referred only to the wages paid directly to laborers, craftsmen, and specialists. It likely excluded many of the project's most expensive elements, including marble, precious stones, transportation, metals, timber, and countless other materials gathered from across the empire and beyond. Other historical manuscripts, although their reliability remains debated, suggest a dramatically larger investment. Using information preserved in those later sources, some historians have estimated that the total cost may have approached 40 million rupees. Because the surviving documentation is incomplete and sometimes contradictory, no single figure can be accepted as definitive. What remains beyond question is that the Taj Mahal ranked among the most ambitious architectural enterprises of the 17th century. The project drew its financial strength from the Mughal state itself. Construction was supported by both the imperial treasury and the treasury of the province of Agra, allowing thousands of craftsmen, engineers, stonecutters, calligraphers, and laborers to continue their work year after year. It was an undertaking sustained by the enormous administrative and economic power of Shah Jahan's empire. But the emperor understood that completing the monument was only the beginning. Without constant care, even the finest architecture would eventually decline. To secure the Taj Mahal's future, Shah Jahan ordered a formal deed of endowment. Under this arrangement, the revenues collected from 30 villages were permanently assigned to the mausoleum. Those funds would pay for its guardians, caretakers, maintenance, and religious observances, ensuring that the monument would continue to be protected long after the emperor himself was gone. It was an investment not simply in stone, but in permanence. One court poet captured that ambition with remarkable imagery, suggesting that when the foundations of the Taj Mahal were laid, even impermanence itself seemed to retreat in fear. Whether poetic or symbolic, the verse reflected how Shah Jahan's contemporaries viewed the monument, not as a temporary achievement of a powerful ruler, but as something intended to challenge the passage of time itself. Yet despite all the marble, the wealth, and the architectural brilliance surrounding him, none of it could replace the woman whose memory had inspired it. Over the 12 years since Mumtaz Mahal's death, one person had quietly become the emperor's greatest source of comfort. Her name was Jahanara Begum, the eldest surviving daughter of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal, and in the years ahead, her own life would become inseparable from the final chapter of the emperor's story. The finest fabrics in the Mughal Empire reflected not only wealth but also royal privilege. The French traveler and jeweler Jean-Baptiste Tavernier recorded that one exceptionally delicate variety of muslin was considered so precious that ordinary merchants were forbidden to export it. Instead, nearly the entire production was reserved for the imperial household and the empire's highest-ranking nobles. During the oppressive heat of the Indian summer, the women of the royal harem and the wives of leading courtiers wore garments fashioned from this almost weightless cloth. Tavernier noted that these elegant fabrics became a familiar feature of court festivities, where music, dance, and ceremony displayed the extraordinary luxury surrounding Shah Jahan's palace. Yet inside that same palace, unimaginable sorrow soon replaced celebration. After Princess Jahanara suffered catastrophic burns in the palace accident of 1644, the emperor himself seemed almost broken by grief. Court historians describe Shah Jahan withdrawing completely from public life on the following day. Rather than appearing before ministers or conducting affairs of state, he remained inside the imperial harem beside his injured daughter, unwilling to leave her side while her life hung in the balance. His response reached every corner of the empire. Religious scholars and holy men across the Mughal dominions were instructed to gather in mosques and offer prayers for Jahanara's recovery. Prisoners were released as acts of royal mercy. Vast charitable donations were distributed among the poor, reflecting the emperor's hope that compassion shown to others might earn divine mercy for his daughter. At the same time, every available medical resource was summoned. Dozens of physicians and surgeons arrived at court. Experienced Mughal healers worked alongside foreign doctors invited to offer whatever knowledge they possessed. No treatment was ignored if it carried even the smallest possibility of saving the emperor's beloved daughter. But Shah Jahan refused to leave her care entirely to others. According to the official chronicles, he personally supervised every stage of Jahanara's treatment. He oversaw her medicines, monitored her food, and even removed and replaced her bandages with his own hands. Government business suffered as a result. Court audiences began late, private councils were shortened, and many affairs of state were postponed because the emperor spent nearly every available moment beside his daughter's bed. The accident had claimed more than one victim. Two of Jahanara's attendants had instinctively rushed forward to extinguish the flames consuming her clothes. Their courage came at a terrible cost. One succumbed to her injuries after 7 days. The second survived only 8 days before dying from her burns. Their sacrifice became another tragic chapter in an already devastating event. For a brief period, hope returned. A Persian physician introduced a treatment that appeared to improve Jahanara's condition. Members of the court began to believe the worst had passed. But the optimism proved short-lived. Her health suddenly declined once again, plunging Shah Jahan into renewed despair as fears spread that the empire might soon lose the princess after all. Then, according to the court historians, an unexpected breakthrough occurred. A royal page prepared a special medicinal dressing unlike those previously attempted. Gradually, over the course of nearly 2 months, the wounds began to heal. Day by day the princess regained strength until the danger that had threatened her life finally receded. Relief swept across the Mughal court. To proclaim the joyful news, Shah Jahan ordered the imperial kettledrums to sound throughout the capital. The ceremony announced to the empire that the emperor's beloved daughter had survived. He then honored Jahanara with a distinction almost without precedent. She was ceremonially weighed against gold, a ritual that until then had been reserved exclusively for the emperor himself. Granting this privilege to a princess demonstrated the extraordinary place Jahanara occupied within Shah Jahan's heart and within the imperial household. Even after her recovery, the celebrations did not begin immediately. Only toward the end of 1644, when Shah Jahan finally became convinced that his daughter had fully recovered, did he proclaim an immense festival of thanksgiving lasting 8 consecutive days. Nothing about the celebration was modest. The emperor presented Jahanara with magnificent treasures beyond ordinary imagination. Court historians recorded priceless jewels, luxurious ornaments, 130 flawless pearls described as being of the purest quality, and an extraordinary jeweled tiara centered upon a single immense diamond. Every gift reflected the emperor's gratitude that his daughter had survived. Yet perhaps the greatest reward was not a jewel at all. Shah Jahan granted Jahanara the revenues of Surat, one of the richest commercial ports in the Mughal Empire. The income from this thriving harbor had once belonged to her great-aunt, the Empress Nur Jahan. By the middle of the 17th century, Surat had become the principal gateway through which many European trading companies conducted business with the Mughal Empire. Control over its revenues made Jahanara one of the wealthiest women of her age. When the celebrations finally drew to a close, the skies above the river were transformed. An immense fireworks display illuminated the waterfront, astonishing the crowds gathered to witness the spectacle. According to Shah Jahan's own historian, no celebration of comparable magnificence had taken place since the emperor first ascended the throne. The emperor's devotion to his daughter impressed many observers. But beyond the walls of the Mughal court, others interpreted that devotion very differently. Several European visitors and writers began repeating disturbing rumors that questioned the nature of the relationship between Shah Jahan and Jahanara. Their suspicions rested largely on two observations. Imperial princesses, following a custom established during Akbar's reign, were generally forbidden from marrying. Jahanara also maintained her own residence outside Agra fort, unlike many other women of the royal household. From these circumstances, speculation began to grow. Some foreign observers wondered whether Jahanara had replaced Mumtaz Mahal not only as the leading woman of the empire but also, they claimed, in Shah Jahan's private affections. These allegations circulated widely among European merchants and travelers, but they remained rumors rather than verified historical evidence. One of the earliest writers to repeat these accusations was the Dutch scholar Johannes de Leet. Although he never visited India himself, de Leet compiled reports sent by others and, in the very year of Mumtaz Mahal's death, repeated the sensational allegation that Shah Jahan had entered into an incestuous relationship with his own daughter after losing his wife. Only months later, English traveler Peter Mundy recorded hearing similar stories while in Agra. He explained that imperial princesses were traditionally not permitted to marry and wrote that local gossip openly accused Shah Jahan of maintaining an improper relationship with Jahanara, whom he referred to as Chimney Begum. Mundy presented these stories as rumors circulating among the city's inhabitants rather than events he had personally witnessed. The allegations refused to disappear. Letters sent home by English clerks stationed in Agra and Surat continued repeating the same claims, allowing the rumors to spread far beyond India into Europe. Years later, the French physician François Bernier encountered these stories after arriving in the Mughal Empire near the end of Shah Jahan's reign. Bernier described Jahanara as exceptionally intelligent and beautiful before repeating the rumor that the emperor's affection had exceeded the limits of propriety. He even claimed that some Muslim scholars had supposedly attempted to justify such behavior through religious arguments. Modern historians, however, have found no reliable contemporary Mughal evidence supporting those alleged legal opinions. Bernier went even further. He claimed that Jahanara had maintained romantic relationships with other men and insisted he was recording history rather than inventing fiction. To support his account, he introduced a dramatic story involving a young man of modest rank whom he alleged had become secretly involved with the princess. According to Bernier's version of events, Shah Jahan unexpectedly entered Jahanara's apartments before the young man could escape. Terrified of discovery, the alleged lover supposedly hid inside a large metal cauldron used for heating bathwater. Bernier wrote that the emperor calmly conversed with his daughter before remarking that she appeared overdue for her customary bath. He then ordered the palace eunuchs to prepare the bath. Whether this dramatic episode ever occurred remains impossible to establish. Like Bernier's other allegations regarding Shah Jahan and Jahanara, the story survives only through his own account and is not confirmed by contemporary Mughal court records. For that reason, Modern historians generally regard these tales as unverified court gossip rather than established historical fact. On the surface, the stories sounded almost impossible to believe. French physician François Bernier claimed that Shah Jahan's jealousy toward Princess Jahanara's alleged lovers reached terrifying extremes. According to Bernier's account, after supposedly discovering one young man hiding inside a large cauldron used for heating bathwater, the emperor quietly ordered servants to light a fire beneath it. Bernier alleged that Shah Jahan did not leave until he was informed that the unfortunate man had died. He went even further, claiming that on another occasion the emperor welcomed one of Jahanara's supposed admirers with a smile, offered him a prepared betel leaf as a royal favor, and secretly poisoned him. Yet even in the 17th century, these extraordinary accusations were far from universally accepted. Among the strongest critics was the Venetian traveler Niccolò Minucci. Rejecting Bernier's dramatic stories, Minucci argued that the tales of boiled lovers and poisoned rivals were nothing more than gossip spread among ordinary people. In his opinion, the rumors had grown because of the unusually close relationship between Shah Jahan and his eldest daughter. Jahanara served her father with remarkable devotion, remained constantly at his side, and possessed an influence over the emperor that few others could match. To many outsiders, that extraordinary closeness was enough to fuel scandalous speculation, even without evidence. Unlike Bernier, Minucci insisted that his observations came from direct experience rather than hearsay. He claimed to have enjoyed unusual access to Jahanara's household, treating members of her harem as a physician and earning the trust of senior ladies and palace eunuchs. Because of those connections, he believed he understood life inside the princess's residence better than most foreign visitors ever could. His description of Jahanara's private world painted an entirely different picture from Bernier's sensational allegations. According to Minucci, the princess appreciated luxury and refinement. He wrote that fine wines regularly arrived at her palace from Persia, Kabul, and Kashmir. Even more prized, however, was a special spirit prepared within her own residence. He described it as being distilled from wine and rosewater before being enriched with costly spices and fragrant aromatic ingredients, producing what he considered an exceptionally fine drink. Minucci even claimed that Jahanara occasionally sent bottles of this rare liquor to his own home as a gesture of gratitude for the medical treatment he had provided to women living within her household. As evening descended over the Mughal court, he wrote, the atmosphere inside Jahanara's palace often transformed into one of music, dancing, theatrical performances, and elaborate entertainment. According to his account, these private gatherings sometimes lasted so long that the princess became unable to stand on her own, requiring attendants to carry her to her chambers before the night finally ended. Realizing that many readers might question such intimate details, Minucci defended his credibility. He maintained that he had been welcomed into the princess's household on familiar terms and had earned the confidence of influential women and eunuchs serving within her residence, allowing him to witness events hidden from the outside world. The official Mughal chronicles, however, tell an entirely different story. Imperial historians never mention incest, secret lovers, poisoned rivals, or any scandal involving Shah Jahan and Jahanara. Instead, they consistently portray the princess as the emperor's beloved daughter, trusted companion, and loyal supporter. Since every official court history required imperial approval before publication, such silence is hardly unexpected. Nevertheless, it leaves historians facing two sharply conflicting traditions. More than 3 centuries later, the truth remains impossible to establish with certainty. The allegations recorded by several European writers cannot be confirmed by contemporary Mughal records. At the same time, the remarkable closeness between Shah Jahan and Jahanara clearly attracted attention both inside and outside the empire, ensuring that rumors survived long after the people involved were gone. Some historians have suggested that Shah Jahan, devastated by the death of Mumtaz Mahal, may have found emotional comfort in a daughter who closely resembled his late wife in appearance and temperament. Others have proposed that Jahanara herself, deeply devoted to her grieving father and fearful for his emotional well-being, devoted herself to supporting him during the darkest years of his life. Even so, many modern scholars consider it more likely that, although Shah Jahan may have developed an unusually intense emotional attachment to Jahanara, there is no reliable evidence demonstrating that those feelings became a physical relationship. Significantly, during the brutal succession struggle that later divided the Mughal dynasty, Shah Jahan's rebellious sons accused their father of numerous political and personal failings, yet none ever charged him with maintaining an incestuous relationship with their sister. Had convincing evidence existed, such an accusation would almost certainly have become a powerful weapon in their campaign against him. Viewed within the broader pattern of Shah Jahan's life, his attachment to Jahanara appears consistent with his emotional dependence upon the women closest to him. He had been profoundly affected by the death of his own mother. His lifelong devotion to Mumtaz Mahal reflected not merely romance but companionship, trust, and emotional partnership. His extraordinary affection for Jahanara may therefore have represented another expression of that same deeply emotional personality rather than proof of the rumors preserved by foreign observers. Whatever the private reality may have been, one fact is beyond dispute. Princess Jahanara possessed immense influence within the Mughal Empire. European visitors repeatedly observed that she could often persuade Shah Jahan to grant requests that others could not. Few individuals enjoyed greater access to the emperor or exercised greater influence over imperial decisions. That influence became especially important in 1644. Following her remarkable recovery from the devastating palace fire, Jahanara intervened on behalf of her younger brother, Prince Aurangzeb. Relations between father and son had become strained after a disagreement with the emperor, and the princess used her considerable influence in an attempt to reconcile them. By then, Aurangzeb had already begun building a formidable military reputation. His first major command had come nearly a decade earlier, in 1635, when Shah Jahan entrusted the 16-year-old prince with leading an imperial campaign against Raja Jujhar Singh of Orcha. Located roughly 100 miles south of Agra, Orcha lay within a heavily forested region whose ruler had rebelled shortly after Shah Jahan's accession. Although that rebellion had previously been suppressed before the emperor's Great Deccan campaign of 1629, Jujhar Singh soon resumed behavior that the Mughal court regarded as dangerously independent. Determined to restore complete imperial authority, Shah Jahan selected his teenage son to command the expedition. Despite his youth and limited battlefield experience, Aurangzeb achieved a decisive victory. Imperial forces overwhelmed the Orcha kingdom, forcing Jujhar Singh to flee deep into the surrounding forests, where, according to Mughal accounts, he was eventually killed by members of the Gond tribes before he could organize further resistance. Aurangzeb continued the pursuit without delay. His army captured the surviving members of Jujhar Singh's family before the royal women could carry out Jauhar, the ritual mass self-immolation practiced by some Rajput women to avoid capture after military defeat. Contemporary Mughal chroniclers condemned the custom, describing it as one of the misguided practices of Hindustan. The campaign also carried important religious consequences. After the conquest, Shah Jahan ordered that a prominent Hindu temple built by Jujhar Singh's father, the same ruler who had earlier been responsible for the death of Emperor Akbar's trusted friend and celebrated court historian, Abul Fazl, during Jahangir's rebellion, be demolished and replaced with a mosque. The decision reflected an important development in the religious character of Shah Jahan's reign and marked another significant step in the changing direction of the Mughal Empire. The death of Mumtaz Mahal marked more than a personal tragedy in Shah Jahan's life. In the years that followed, many contemporaries believed the emperor himself had begun to change. The ruler who had once displayed much of the political balance practiced by Akbar and Jahangir gradually appeared to adopt a firmer and increasingly orthodox approach toward matters of religion. Whether this transformation grew from overwhelming personal grief, political calculation, or pressure from influential Sunni scholars remains a subject historians continue to debate. Whatever the cause, several important decisions taken during the early 1630s suggest that a noticeable shift was underway within the Mughal court. One of the earliest signs appeared in 1632. Shah Jahan ordered the destruction of Hindu temples that had been constructed recently throughout the empire and prohibited the building of new ones. Particular attention was directed toward the sacred city of Benares, which Mughal officials described as a major center of Hindu religious life. The emperor insisted that these directives be enforced there with special determination. Historians have offered different explanations for these measures. Some argue that Shah Jahan's profound grief after Mumtaz Mahal's death may have convinced him that divine displeasure had fallen upon him because of excessive religious leniency. Others believe influential Orthodox clerics, whose support remained politically valuable, encouraged the emperor to adopt a more uncompromising religious policy after he had earlier distanced himself from several hard-line Sunni figures following his accession to the throne. That same year witnessed another dramatic development, one that fundamentally altered relations between the Mughal Empire and the Portuguese community established in Bengal. For decades, Portuguese merchants had maintained a prosperous settlement at Hugli on the banks of the Hooghly River, northwest of present-day Kolkata. Yet Shah Jahan viewed these Europeans with far greater suspicion than his father, Emperor Jahangir. Even earlier, the English ambassador Sir Thomas Roe had complained that Shah Jahan showed considerably less trust toward foreign powers than previous Mughal rulers. Official Mughal chroniclers accused the Portuguese settlement of committing a series of serious offenses. According to imperial records, the Portuguese had transformed their trading colony into a fortified military position protected by artillery, firearms, and defensive walls. They were further accused of attacking neighboring villages, forcing local inhabitants to embrace Christianity, and selling captives into slavery. Whether every accusation reflected the complete reality remains uncertain, but together they provided the Mughal court with a powerful justification for military action. Political memory also influenced the emperor's decision. Years before becoming emperor, during his rebellion against Jahangir, Shah Jahan had sought assistance from the Portuguese. Instead of offering support, they reportedly aided the imperial forces opposing him. Even after he ascended the peacock throne, Portuguese representatives allegedly failed to observe the customary diplomatic tradition of presenting formal congratulations and royal gifts to the new emperor. These earlier insults remained unforgotten within the imperial court. Some historical accounts preserve an even more personal explanation for Shah Jahan's hostility. The Venetian traveler Niccolao Minucci later recorded a story claiming that while Shah Jahan and the pregnant Mumtaz Mahal were fleeing through Bengal during the years of rebellion, Portuguese men from Hugli seized two of Mumtaz's favorite female attendants. According to Minucci, Mumtaz appealed for their return, reminding the Portuguese that helping a prince in distress would earn greater honor than exploiting his misfortune. He wrote that her request was ignored. Although this episode survives only in later European accounts and cannot be independently verified, several historians have noted it as one possible motive behind Shah Jahan's determination to punish the Portuguese settlement. Whatever combination of political, religious, and personal grievances motivated the emperor, the imperial response proved overwhelming. Acting under Shah Jahan's direct orders, the governor of Bengal launched a full-scale siege against Hugli. Mughal forces sealed the river by stretching lines of boats across the waterway, preventing escape by ship while surrounding the fortified settlement on land. Engineers then prepared one of the decisive blows of the campaign by placing an enormous mine beneath the Portuguese defenses. When the explosives detonated, sections of the fortifications collapsed, allowing Mughal troops to storm the settlement. The fighting ended in a crushing Mughal victory. More than 4,000 captives, many of them women and children, were taken prisoner and forced to undertake a journey lasting approximately 11 months before reaching Agra. Their fate attracted considerable attention from contemporary European observers. The French physician François Bernier later described what he believed happened after the prisoners arrived at the Mughal capital. According to his account, many younger women were absorbed into the imperial harem, while others were distributed among leading Mughal nobles. Young boys were reportedly circumcised and raised as palace pages. Adult men, Bernier claimed, often accepted conversion to Islam after facing promises of mercy or threats of severe punishment, including execution beneath the feet of trained elephants. Because Bernier wrote as a European observer rather than an official Mughal historian, modern scholars generally regard his account as valuable but not beyond question. Persian court historian Abdul Hamid Lahori presented the episode from the Mughal perspective. He recorded that prisoners who refused conversion were imprisoned and wrote that Christian religious images identified as representations of prophets were thrown into the Yamuna River, while other statues and sacred objects were destroyed. His account reflects the official position of Shah Jahan's court and demonstrates how the victory was presented within imperial chronicles. The campaign against the Portuguese did not end at Hugli. Shah Jahan also ordered churches built during Jahangir's reign in Agra and Lahore to be demolished. One church in Agra possessed a tall bell tower whose clock could reportedly be heard across much of the city. Some historians have suggested that the emperor, still grieving over Mumtaz Mahal's death, may have considered the sound of Christian bells inappropriate near the resting place of his beloved queen, although this remains an interpretation rather than an established historical fact. Yet despite these harsh measures, Shah Jahan did not continue an unbroken campaign against Christian communities throughout the remainder of his reign. Relations gradually improved. Jesuit missionaries in Agra, who themselves had experienced difficulties during the early years of Shah Jahan's rule, eventually regained a measure of royal acceptance. Some even succeeded in intervening on behalf of captive priests taken during the Hugli campaign. These later developments suggest that the emperor's anti-Portuguese actions were directed as much toward specific political and military grievances as toward religious differences alone. Among those who viewed Shah Jahan's increasingly orthodox policies with approval was one of his own sons, Prince Aurangzeb, whose religious outlook was already noticeably more austere than that of previous Mughal princes, welcomed these demonstrations of Islamic orthodoxy. Even during his youth, Aurangzeb displayed a stricter interpretation of religion than many members of the imperial family, a characteristic that distinguished him within Shah Jahan's court. At this stage of his life, however, Aurangzeb stood high in his father's favor because of his military achievements. Following his successful campaign against the ruler of Orcha, Shah Jahan rewarded the young prince with one of the empire's most important appointments. He named Aurangzeb governor of the Deccan, a strategically vital region that had long challenged Mughal authority. The prince would remain in this position for approximately 8 years. His arrival in the Deccan carried enormous military significance. Backed by a powerful Mughal army, Aurangzeb's presence alone altered the political balance of southern India. The ruler of Bijapur soon agreed to conclude a treaty with the Mughal Empire, while the neighboring kingdom of Golconda also found itself compelled to reconsider its position as imperial pressure steadily increased across the Deccan frontier. The years that followed elevated Prince Aurangzeb even further within the Mughal hierarchy. Impressed by his military service and administrative discipline, Shah Jahan rewarded him with additional promotions, increasing both his imperial rank and the generous allowances that accompanied it. From the outside, the relationship between father and son appeared stable. Yet beneath the surface, tensions were already beginning to grow, tensions that would soon alter the balance inside the imperial family. In May 1644, news of Princess Jahanara Begum's devastating fire accident reached the Deccan. Without delay, Aurangzeb traveled north to Agra to be at his sister's bedside during her long struggle for survival. His arrival demonstrated both his concern for Jahanara and his continuing loyalty to the imperial household. But during this visit, something occurred inside the Mughal court that permanently damaged his relationship with Shah Jahan. The official court historian Abdul Hamid Lahori explained the incident only briefly, writing that Aurangzeb had fallen under the influence of ill-advised and short-sighted companions, and had begun to withdraw from worldly responsibilities. The imperial chronicle offered no further explanation, leaving later historians to search for other clues. One important clue survives in a private letter written by Aurangzeb nearly a decade later to his sister Jahanara. Looking back on those troubled days, he confessed that he believed his own life had become a target of rivals. Although he never identified the rival by name, historians have little doubt whom he feared most. That rival was his elder brother, Dara Shukoh. Everything about Dara seemed designed to attract Shah Jahan's admiration. Handsome, charismatic, intellectually gifted, and deeply interested in Sufi philosophy, Dara spent much of his time beside the emperor. Shah Jahan openly displayed his affection toward his eldest surviving son, and in 1633 he strengthened Dara's position by granting him the district of Hisar Firoza, a distinction traditionally reserved for the heir apparent. Along with that honor came the rare privilege of pitching the imperial crimson tent, another powerful symbol that many within the court interpreted as a public declaration of succession. For Aurangzeb, these honors were impossible to ignore. As the brothers matured, their rivalry extended beyond politics into religion. Dara embraced an unusually broad intellectual world, exploring Islamic mysticism while also showing interest in other religious traditions. His outlook reflected the intellectual curiosity once encouraged by Akbar and, to a lesser extent, Jahangir. Aurangzeb viewed those interests very differently. To him, Dara's religious ideas appeared dangerously close to heresy. Dara, in turn, dismissed Aurangzeb as rigid, uncompromising, and excessively orthodox. Long before either brother fought for power, their beliefs had already divided them. According to one courtier, this growing hostility erupted dramatically while Jahanara was still recovering from her injuries. Shah Jahan visited Dara's newly completed mansion overlooking the river at Agra, accompanied by both princes. During the tour, Dara reportedly invited Aurangzeb into an underground chamber beneath the residence. Aurangzeb refused. Convinced that entering the chamber placed his life at risk, he remained standing firmly in the doorway. The courtier claimed that Shah Jahan himself ordered his son to go inside, yet Aurangzeb still refused to obey. Whether this extraordinary confrontation actually occurred remains uncertain. Many modern historians regard the account as too dramatic to accept without question. Even so, the story reflects a reality supported by other evidence: distrust between the two brothers had reached a dangerous level. Whatever words were exchanged afterward, the consequences proved immediate. Feeling overlooked in favor of Dara, Aurangzeb appears to have confronted his father about his grievances. Instead of receiving sympathy, he provoked Shah Jahan's anger. During the dispute that followed, Aurangzeb either lost his rank and governorship by imperial order, or, according to another tradition, resigned his offices himself in frustration. Contemporary sources disagree on which version is correct, but they agree that a serious breach had opened between emperor and son. Aurangzeb soon realized the cost of that confrontation. For nearly 7 months he remained outside his father's favor, watching his political position weaken while Dara's influence continued to grow within the palace. His return came through an unexpected ally. Court historians record that Aurangzeb's restoration resulted only through the determined intervention of Princess Jahanara Begum. After recovering from her terrible injuries, she chose the celebrations marking her recovery as the perfect moment to plead her brother's case before Shah Jahan. The emperor finally relented. Aurangzeb regained his former imperial rank, and only a few months later, in February 1645, Shah Jahan entrusted him with one of the richest and most prestigious appointments in the empire by naming him governor of Gujarat. Outwardly, harmony appeared to have returned to the Mughal court. Yet beneath that temporary reconciliation, old rivalries remained alive. Historians have often noted striking similarities between the growing hostility separating Dara Shukoh and Aurangzeb and the earlier struggle between Shah Jahan himself and his half-brother Khusrau. Dara and Aurangzeb shared both parents, unlike the previous generation, but blood alone would prove incapable of preventing another bitter conflict from taking shape inside the house of Timur.